I'm Suzette Martinez Standring, and welcome to It's All Right with Suzette, where we talk about the craft of writing and mystery lovers, suspense thrillers, those kind of books that really give you the wonderful feeling of wondering what happens next. You're in for a thrill today because Hank Phillippi Ryan is here with us to talk about her new book, The Wrong Girl. And Hank is an Emmy Award-winning Channel 7 News investigative reporter. She is a multiple award-winning author of mysteries, and she is the winner of the 2013 Mary Higgins Clark Award. And I want to welcome you here today.
Thank you.
It is such a thrill to have you here because I read your book, and and I know it sounds cliche, but it really is a page turner.
If you could just say that a couple more times.
That would page turner.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have people love the book. This is one of the things that you never know whether that will happen. You spend this year alone in front of the computer weaving this story. You know, after 40 years in television, I finally get to make stuff up. And the key is you wonder every moment, will readers love this? Will people care about it? Will people think it's suspenseful and riveting and important? And, you know, so to hear you say you love it is the very best thing that there could possibly be.
I found the characters to be so realistic, the dialogue to be wonderful. And, you know, I understand that the idea for this book came to you as an actual investigative tip on your job as a news reporter. So can you tell us about that and about the book and the plot lines?
Sure. One of the wonderful things about having a dual career now as an investigative reporter and as a crime fiction author is that I get hundreds of news tips every week. I mean, I rely on that. If you have a good news story, you know, call me. And the key is deciding which of those stories that I'm told will be stories that go on the air or not. So for the first, 40 years of my career, that's all I thought about. And now, as a crime fiction author, I always wonder, is this a nugget for a crime fiction novel? Or always sort of in the back of my mind is that idea. So one day, 2 years ago, I would say, I got a call from a woman who said that, she says, you should do a story about my cousin. So I'm open, I listen to everything. You know, you never know when it's going to be the story of the century. And this woman says to me, my cousin was given up for adoption as an infant. And 25 years later, she got a call from the adoption agency saying, we found your birth mother. Are you interested in talking with your birth mother? And she said, sure, of course I am. And I understand that sometimes people are not interested in talking with their birth mothers or finding their birth parents, but this girl was. So she says she went up to New Hampshire, to neutral territory, to meet the woman who was supposedly her birth mother. And they met and they liked each other very much. But this woman tells me on the phone, she says it became clear soon after that they were not related. They were not biological mother and biological daughter. So this woman says to me on the phone, can you believe it? They sent that woman the wrong girl. And I thought, oh my goodness, my book, my book, my book. You know, it's one of those moments when you just thank the universe for a good idea. Now, you know, of course, I had to find out what happened to her, and it turned out that it was a series of unbelievable coincidences that had led this mismatch of a biological mother and a biological daughter who didn't match. As an investigative reporter, I wanted to know, could this have happened to anyone else? How did it happen? Why did it happen? You know, it was a fascinating story. And it turned out to be a series of coincidences that very unlikely that it would happen again. But as a crime fiction author, of course, I began to think about motivation, about possibilities, about what would happen if an adoption agency really were reuniting birth parents with the wrong children. And that became The Wrong Girl. I mean, think about that. What would the ramifications be? What would the results be? Think about the tangle of families that would occur in that. And I started thinking about, you know, how much does it mean to us to know who we are? How much does it mean to us to know our history? What if someone, for some reason that I had to figure out, made up a history for you and said to you, this is who you are? and you believe them. And one day, 25 years later, someone told you that's just not true. How would that affect your life? And as a crime fiction author, I had to figure out how that might lead to murder and how it might be a bigger story and what could happen and all the legal elements of it. And that turned out to be The Wrong Girl. Just from that one random phone call of the universe, turned out to be The Wrong Girl.
Because, you know, there are a lot of fascinating aspects to the dark side of foster care and adoption. And I was especially drawn to the whole idea of this, this deep need to be reunited with your biological mother. Because I think that that's kind of an undercurrent in a lot of people who are adopted. And so did you come into contact or familiarize yourself with this dark underbelly through years of being an investigative reporter, or did you have to kind of do some new research into that kind of thing?
Both. The answer is absolutely both, and other things too. I mean, a lot of being reunited with birth parents is wonderful and fabulous and life-changing and heartbreaking and heartwarming. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes birth parents and birth children don't want to be together for whatever reason, and that's fine too. And that's one of the things that I wanted to explore in this book, how each person, each family, each connection makes their own decisions about what they want to do. You were asking me about what the plot of The Wrong Girl was. And quickly, let me just say that the star of the show is Jane Ryland,
yes,
who is a television reporter in Boston who's been fired from her job for protecting a source. So she gets a low-paying job on a local newspaper, and she's on the hunt for the story that will save her career. And she begins to suspect that a respected adoption agency may actually, or may not, be reuniting birth parents with the wrong children. So she's on the trail of this story that could be a blockbuster. I mean, what a scandal that would be if that was happening. And she says, you know, what would the motivation? Why would somebody do that? Is it money? Is it power? Is it selfishness? Is it greed? Is it manipulation? Is it deception? What is it that would cause someone to do that? The other main character in the story is the very dashing Boston police detective Jake Brogan. And Jake is on the trail of the murder of a foster mother. And again, that's how foster families come into the story. Jake is on the trail of the murder of a foster mother. He, as a police officer, as a detective, finds, called to a murder scene. There's a young woman on the floor of her kitchen murdered. Her 2 toddler foster children were asleep in the next room when this happened. And in the back bedroom is an empty crib. A crib where clearly an infant should be sleeping. So is that infant someone who's on the way there? And if so, where is the baby? Or was the baby there when the murder occurred and was kidnapped? The other question is, after this murder happened, someone called 911 to report it.
Yes.
So there's the dead woman, there are the 2 toddlers who can't talk. Who called 911? And that's the opening mystery of the book. And as in all my stories, the Jane story and the Jake story come together, and they sort of intertwine and solve each other in the end.
I think you do a fabulous job, you know, of creating the characters and the tension and the conflicts between the investigative reporter and the police detective, because obviously there's the attraction between them, and yet there's so many things that they're not supposed to be interacting with, and you do a really great job of drawing those lines. Can you talk, you know, this is the first book in which you introduce these 2 lead characters. So can you give us a little bit about that dynamic and that tension and the energy between them and the conflict?
Sure, this is one of the most fun things in my life, is to work on the Jake and Jane story. As you know, Jane Ryland, the main character, the reporter, and Jake Brogan, the main character, the police detective, were introduced in The Other Woman, my first novel in the series, which some have called The Good Wife Meets Law and Order. So that's kind of a political thriller that won the Higgins Clark Award last year. The Other Woman was nominated also for the Anthony, Agatha, Daphne, Seamus, and McCavity Awards. So every major crime fiction award this book was nominated for, and won the Higgins Clark Award, The Other Woman. You can read these novels in any order. So like Sue Grafton, you can read L, and then you could read B, and then you could read W. You can read The Wrong Girl first, and then read The Other Woman, or whichever way you want. So anyway, Jake and Jane. Jane Ryland is 33 years old. She's a television reporter in Boston. She was fired because she protected a source. Her station was sued. They lost $1 million lawsuit, and Jane was thrown under the bus, a defamation lawsuit, and Jane was thrown under the bus as a result of that. She lost her job. She was fired. So she's trying to regain, she's trying for redemption. She's trying to get her reputation as a reporter back, because the one thing that you can't do as a reporter, and I know this so well after I've been a reporter for 40 years and still on the air at Channel 7, the one thing you can't do is be wrong. You can't make a mistake. And that is what the public thinks happened to Jane Ryland, that she made a mistake. So she needs to be redeemed. She needs to get her mojo back. Jake Brogan, the Boston police detective, is 35. He was made a police detective at a young age, and everyone knows it's because his grandfather was the police commissioner. So Jake has something of his own to prove. He needs to prove he has the right stuff to be a cop. The complication between these two wonderful people, they're both honorable, they're both determined, they're both devoted to their jobs, they're both funny and fun and good people. They're madly in love with each other, but this cannot be, because a reporter cannot be dating a source. It just, it won't work. It makes the balance out of whack. People would always wonder, is she being as tough on him as she would be on anyone else? Is she asking the hard questions? What if he makes a mistake? What if he looks bad? Is she protecting him? And a cop certainly can't be having an intimate affair with a reporter the minute there's a leak or the minute there's a story that comes out of the police department that isn't supposed to. Who's going to be blamed? He's going to be blamed. So these two, are very attracted to each other, but professionally, they can't be together. So what do two honorable, good, honest people do when in their professional lives they have to stay apart, but in their personal lives they just can't bear that? But they don't want to lie, they don't want to sneak. So how do you handle that? How do you balance your personal life and your professional life, especially when there's this absolute prohibition against what you want to do the very most? And that is the problem for Jake and Jane.
I think that's one of the most fascinating aspects of it. And you really do capture so well in your book the integrity of both people, and yet this unbelievable pull toward each other. So, in a couple of minutes, we're going to return and we're going to talk to Hank about her writing process and the development of characters and how she goes about creating such an award-winning book. So stay tuned, and we're going to talk a little more about The Wrong Girl.